Maya Chen walked through the gleaming corridors of the Galactic Defense Academy like she owned nothing more than the worn duffel bag slung over her shoulder. Students from dozens of species lined the walls, their conversations dying to whispers as the human passed. She kept her eyes forward, ignoring the stares that followed her every step. "Another Terran," hissed a Velkari student, his scaled lips curling in disgust. "As if we needed more of their kind here." Maya's step didn't falter, but her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. She had heard worse, much worse, usually right before she put someone in the ground. The Academy's main hall stretched before her like a cathedral of learning and warfare. Holographic displays showed tactical simulations from across the galaxy, while recruitment banners from various military branches hung from the vaulted ceiling. Students clustered around tables, their species naturally segregating into familiar groups. The massive Gorlaks dominated one corner with their rocky hides and booming voices. Sleek Zephyrians glided between tables on their gossamer wings. The insectoid Kreks clicked and chittered in their clicking language. And then there were the humans. Maybe 30 of them scattered throughout the hall, trying to blend in with other species or huddled together in their own small groups. They were outnumbered 100-1, and everyone knew it. Maya approached the registration desk, where a bored-looking Centaurian clerk barely glanced up from his holographic display. His 4 arms continued typing, while 2 of his eyes remained fixed on whatever entertainment he was consuming. "Transfer paperwork," Maya said, placing a data pad on the counter. The clerk's remaining eyes finally focused on her. His expression shifted from boredom to mild surprise. Humans were rare at the Academy, but transfer students were even rarer. Most species that made it this far had been training since childhood. "Maya Chen, Terran designation 7742 Alpha," he read aloud, his voice carrying further than necessary. Several nearby conversations stopped. "Previous institution, heavily redacted. Military service record, also redacted. Combat experience." The clerk paused, frowning at his screen. "The entire file is classified above my clearance level." A murmur rippled through the nearby students. Classified files usually meant one of 2 things. Either the student was connected to someone extremely important, or they had done something extremely dangerous. Given that this was a human, most assumed it was the former. "Room assignment?" Maya asked, ignoring the growing attention. "Dormitory Complex 7, room 4472. You'll be sharing with..." The clerk's typing paused. "Interesting. You're assigned to a single occupancy room. Those are typically reserved for senior cadets or special circumstances." Maya took the room key without comment and shouldered her bag. As she turned to leave, a massive shadow fell across her path. She looked up to see a Gorlak student blocking her way, his stone-like features set in what passed for a sneer among his species. "Well, well," the Gorlak rumbled, his voice like grinding boulders. "Another soft skin trying to play soldier. Tell me, little human, what makes you think you belong here with real warriors?" The hall had gone quiet now, dozens of eyes watching the confrontation. This was standard hazing for any new student, but humans always drew special attention. They were seen as weak, fragile creatures who had somehow talked their way into institutions meant for proper warriors. Maya looked up at the Gorlak, who stood nearly 3 meters tall and probably weighed as much as a small shuttle. His name tag read Thorn, and judging by the decorations on his uniform, he was in his final year at the Academy. "Excuse me," Maya said simply, attempting to step around him. Thorn shifted to block her path again, his massive form casting an even larger shadow. "I don't think you heard me, meatbag. I asked you a question. What gives you the right to be here?" Maya stopped and looked up at him again. When she spoke, her voice was calm, almost bored. "My admission paperwork gives me the right to be here. Now move." A few students chuckled at the human's audacity, but most looked uncomfortable. Gorlaks were notoriously violent when challenged, and their rocky hides made them nearly invulnerable to most forms of unarmed combat. A smart human would apologize and back down. Thorn's eyes flared with anger. "You dare?" "I dare many things," Maya interrupted, her voice still perfectly level. "But right now, I just want to find my room and get some sleep. So for the last time, move." The Gorlak's massive fist clenched, and for a moment it looked like he might actually strike the tiny human. The crowd held its breath. Violence wasn't technically forbidden in the Academy's common areas, though it was strongly discouraged. Then someone cleared their throat behind Thorn. "Is there a problem here?" The voice belonged to Commander Voss, a Terran officer whose presence immediately changed the dynamics of the situation. He was a lean man in his 50s, with graying hair and the kind of scars that spoke of real combat experience. More importantly, he wore the insignia of the Academy's Combat Instruction Department. Thorn immediately stepped back, his aggression deflating. Even Gorlaks knew better than to challenge a senior instructor. "No, sir," Thorn rumbled. "Just welcoming the new student." Commander Voss looked between the Gorlak and Maya, his experienced eyes missing nothing. "I see. Cadet Chen, I presume? I've been expecting you. Please report to my office tomorrow at 800 hours. "Yes, sir," Maya replied. "Good. Cadet Thorn, perhaps you have somewhere else to be?" The Gorlak nodded quickly and lumbered away, his friends following. The crowd began to disperse, disappointed that the confrontation had ended without violence. Commander Voss watched them go before turning back to Maya. "A word of advice, Cadet. Not all of our instructors are as understanding as I am about human capabilities. You might want to keep a low profile until you've had a chance to prove yourself properly." Maya nodded. "Understood, sir." "Good. Now get settled. Your real education begins tomorrow." As the commander walked away, Maya continued toward the dormitory complex. She could feel eyes still watching her, and conversations resumed in her wake. She caught fragments of various languages, but the meaning was universal. Another weak human had somehow gained admission to the academy, and it would be interesting to see how quickly she washed out. Room 4472 was on the 4th level of Dormitory Complex 7, down a corridor lined with identical doors. Maya's keycard activated the lock with a soft chime, and the door slid open to reveal a Spartanly furnished but adequate single room. A bed, a desk, a small bathroom, and a wall locker. Nothing fancy, but it was hers. She dropped her duffel bag on the bed and began unpacking. Her possessions were few. Some civilian clothes, academy uniforms, basic toiletries, and a few personal items. She pulled out a small framed photograph and set it on the desk. The image showed a much younger Maya in military dress uniform, standing with a group of other soldiers. Their faces were serious, professional. If someone looked closely, they might notice that Maya was the only one in the photo still alive. A soft chime from her door interrupted her unpacking. Maya frowned and checked the time. It was nearly 2200 hours, well past the time for casual visits. She approached the door cautiously and activated the external camera. A young Zephyrian female stood in the corridor, her iridescent wings folded nervously behind her back. She was small even by Zephyrian standards, with delicate features and large, expressive eyes that darted nervously up and down the corridor. Maya opened the door. "Can I help you?" The Zephyrian started slightly, as if she hadn't expected the door to actually open. My name is Lyra. I'm in the room next door. I wanted to—" She trailed off, her wings fluttering with anxiety. Maya waited patiently. "I wanted to say that what Thorn did was wrong," Lyra finished in a rush. "Not all of us think humans don't belong here. Some of us know better." Maya studied the young alien for a moment. Zephyrians were known for their intelligence and their natural affinity for starship navigation. but they were also notoriously timid. For one to approach a stranger, especially a human, took considerable courage. "Thank you," Maya said. "That's thoughtful of you." Lyra's wings brightened slightly, a Zephyrian sign of pleasure. "I've read about human military history. Your species has accomplished remarkable things despite your physical limitations. The defense of Kepler Station, the Battle of the Outer Rim, the siege at—" "I'm familiar with human military history," Maya interrupted gently. "Of course, sorry. I just meant, well, Thorn and his friends think strength is everything, but intelligence and tactics matter more than raw power, don't they?" Maya almost smiled. Almost. Sometimes, other times raw power is exactly what's needed. Lyra looked confused by this response, but before she could ask for clarification, voices echoed from the far end of the corridor. Both females turned to see a group of students approaching, their conversation loud and boisterous. Maya recognized Thorn's rumbling voice among them. "You should go," Maya said quietly. Lyra's wings fluttered nervously. "Will I see you in classes?" "Probably." The Zephyrian hesitated for a moment longer, then quickly fluttered back to her own room. Maya watched her go, then closed and locked her door as Thorn and his friends passed by in the corridor. She heard them discussing their plans for the next day's combat exercises, their voices full of confidence and swagger. Maya returned to her unpacking, pulling out her academy schedules and course materials. Advanced tactical studies, xenobiology, starship operations, combat applications, and interspecies diplomacy. A full load, designed to prepare students for leadership roles in the Galactic Defense Forces. She had seen the curriculum before, of course, had studied it extensively during the transport to the academy. What the other students didn't know, what the carefully redacted files didn't reveal, was that Maya had already put most of these theories into practice. She had fought in 4 different star systems, led troops from 7 different species, and earned decorations from governments that officially didn't exist. But she was here to learn, not to teach. At least, that was what her orders said. Maya pulled out a secure communicator, checking for messages. One new transmission, heavily encrypted and marked with the highest priority codes. She activated the device and waited for the decryption to complete. The message was brief. Integration proceeding as planned. Maintain cover until Phase 2 authorization. Remember your primary objective. Maya deleted the message and stored the communicator in her locker's hidden compartment. Then she sat on her bed and stared out the small window at the Academy's training grounds below. Tomorrow, she would begin the careful process of pretending to be a normal student. She would struggle with concepts she had mastered years ago, ask questions she already knew the answers to, and pretend that the tactical scenarios were new challenges rather than simplified versions of battles she had actually fought. It would be the hardest mission of her career. A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Maya checked the time again. Nearly midnight. She activated the external camera and saw Commander Voss standing in the corridor, alone. She opened the door immediately. "Sir? May I come in, Cadet?" Maya stepped aside and the commander entered her room. He glanced around, taking note of the sparse decorations and the photograph on her desk. His eyes lingered on the image for a moment longer than necessary. "The 47th Tactical Response Unit," he said quietly. "I served with some of those men and women. Good soldiers." Maya said nothing. "Your file makes for interesting reading," Commander Voss continued. "What little of it I'm cleared to see anyway. 3 tours in active combat zones, distinguished service record, multiple commendations for valor under fire. Not typical credentials for an academy transfer student." "I wanted to complete my formal education, sir." "Yes, that's what your application says. Seeking to develop leadership skills and theoretical understanding to complement practical experience." Very diplomatic. The commander moved to the window and looked out at the training grounds. "Tell me, cadet, what do you think of our facilities?" "They're impressive, sir." "They are. State-of-the-art training equipment, simulation chambers that can recreate any environment in known space, instructors drawn from the finest military academies in the galaxy. Everything a young officer needs to prepare for the challenges of defending civilized space." Maya waited for him to continue. "Of course," Commander Voss went on. "Simulations are just that. Simulations. They can teach tactics and theory, but they can't truly prepare someone for the reality of combat, the fear, the confusion, the split-second decisions that determine who lives and who dies. That kind of knowledge can only be gained through experience." He turned back to face her. "Which brings me to an interesting question. Why would someone who already has that experience want to come here and pretend they don't?" The question hung in the air between them. Maya met his gaze steadily, her expression revealing nothing. "I'm not sure I understand the question, sir." Commander Voss smiled slightly. "No, I don't suppose you do. Well, regardless of your reasons for being here, you are here, and while you're under my instruction, you'll be treated like any other cadet. That means following orders, maintaining discipline, and demonstrating the same respect for your fellow students that you would expect in return." "Of course, sir." "Good. One more thing, cadet. The Academy's student body includes representatives from 47 different species, each with their own cultural norms and social hierarchies. Humans make up less than 2% of our enrollment, which puts you in a rather unique position. Some students will test you, as Cadet Thorne did today. Others will try to befriend you, like young Lyra next door. A few will simply ignore you entirely." He paused at the door. "My advice? Be careful who you trust, and be even more careful who you underestimate. Good night, cadet." After he left, Maya locked the door and completed her unpacking in silence. She arranged her uniforms in the wall locker, set up her personal hygiene items in the bathroom, and placed her few books on the desk. Finally, she changed into sleeping clothes and lay down on the narrow bed. But sleep didn't come easily. Through the thin walls, she could hear the sounds of student life, muffled conversations, the hum of study devices, the occasional laugh or argument. Normal sounds of young people preparing for their futures, blissfully unaware of the real dangers that waited in the dark between the stars. Maya stared at the ceiling and thought about her real mission. Phase 1 was simple: integrate into the Academy's social structure and establish herself as a typical transfer student. Phase 2 would come later, when her handlers decided the time was right. Until then, she would play her role, attend her classes, and pretend that the most dangerous thing she had ever faced was a written examination. The irony wasn't lost on her. Here she was, one of the most highly trained soldiers in human space, pretending to be a student in a school that was supposed to teach her how to be a soldier. It was like a master chef pretending to learn how to boil water. But Maya had her orders, and she always followed orders. Even when those orders required her to hide the very skills that had kept her alive through a dozen impossible situations. Especially then. As the Academy settled into its nighttime quiet, Maya finally drifted off to sleep. Her dreams were filled with the faces of soldiers she had known, battles she had fought, and enemies she had killed. In her dreams, she wasn't Maya Chen, nervous transfer student. She was something else entirely. She was death herself, wearing a human face and carrying a student ID card. Maya's alarm chimed at 0600 hours, though she had been awake for the past 20 minutes, listening to the Academy come alive around her. Old habits died hard, and in her line of work, those habits had kept her breathing when others hadn't been so fortunate. She dressed quickly in the standard Academy uniform, gray utility pants, black combat boots, and a navy blue shirt with her name and rank insignia. The clothes felt strange after years of actual military gear, but they would have to do. The corridor outside her room buzzed with activity as students prepared for their first classes. Maya emerged to find Lyra waiting by her door, wings fluttering nervously. "I thought maybe we could walk to the dining hall together," the Zephyrian said. "If you don't mind, that is." Maya considered declining. Attachments were dangerous and they complicated missions, but her cover required her to act like a normal student, and normal students made friends. "Sure," Maya said. They walked together through corridors filled with the morning rush. Students from dozens of species hurried past, their conversations a babble of languages and clicking sounds. Maya noticed how they naturally segregated themselves. Gorlax with Gorlax, Zephyrians with other wing-bearers, the handful of humans clustering together nervously. "How long have you been at the academy?" Maya asked. 2 years now," Lyra replied. "I'm in the Accelerated Navigation program. Most Zephyrians are. We have a natural sense for three-dimensional movement that translates well to starship operations." They passed a group of senior Krex students whose chittering conversation fell silent as the two females approached. Maya felt their compound eyes tracking her movement, analyzing potential threats and weaknesses. The insectoids were natural predators, and their military academies emphasized pack-hunting tactics. "What about you?" Lyra continued. "What's your specialty track?" "Still deciding," Maya lied smoothly. "I want to see what's available before committing to a particular path." The dining hall was a massive space designed to accommodate the dietary needs of 4 species. The air was filled with a mixture of cooking smells, some appetizing to human senses, others decidedly not. Maya grabbed a tray and selected items she recognized: synthetic proteins that resembled chicken, processed fruits that tasted almost like apples, and a caffeine beverage that was nearly indistinguishable from coffee. Lyra chose a selection of nectar-based foods and what looked like crystallized tree sap. They found an empty table near the windows overlooking the academy's central courtyard. "So what's Earth really like?" Lyra asked as they ate. "I've seen the holovids, but I imagine the reality is different." Maya considered how to answer. The truth was that she hadn't seen Earth in over 3 years, not since her unit had been deployed to the frontier wars. Her memories of home were limited to a small apartment in New Geneva that probably didn't even exist anymore. "Crowded," she said finally. "Lots of people, lots of cities. Not much wilderness left." "That sounds lonely." Maya looked at the young Zephyrian with surprise. Most species viewed humanity's population density as a sign of strength, proof that they could thrive in harsh conditions. But Lyra seemed to understand something others missed, that being surrounded by millions of people could be the loneliest feeling in the universe. "Sometimes," Maya admitted. Their conversation was interrupted by the approach of 3 large figures. Thorn and 2 of his friends, their rocky features set in expressions that might have been amusement or anger. It was hard to tell with Gorlax. "Well, if it isn't our new human student," Thorn rumbled. "Making friends already, I see." Lyra's wings folded tightly against her back, a defensive posture that made her look even smaller. Maya continued eating, not acknowledging the Gorlax presence. "I was wondering," Thorn continued, "how exactly you managed to gain admission here. Humans don't typically have the physical requirements for academy training." Several nearby tables had gone quiet, their occupants turning to watch the confrontation. Maya could feel the weight of their attention, but she kept her expression neutral. "Maybe she's connected," suggested one of Thorn's friends, a slightly smaller Gorlak named Krell. "You know how humans are with their politics and corruption." "That must be it," Thorn agreed. No other explanation for how something so fragile could end up in a warrior's school. Maya set down her eating utensil and looked up at the 3 Gorlaks. When she spoke, her voice was calm and conversational. "Is there something specific you wanted? Or are you just here to demonstrate your conversational skills?" Thorne's eyes flared with anger at the casual dismissal. "You think you're clever, don't you? Let's see how clever you are during combat exercises. I've requested you for my sparring group." "Looking forward to it," Maya replied, returning to her meal. The Gorlaks stood there for a moment longer, apparently expecting a different reaction. When none came, they moved away, their departure marked by disappointed murmurs from the watching students. "You shouldn't antagonize them," Lyra whispered once they were gone. "Gorlaks hold grudges, and Thorne is one of the strongest students in his class." Maya glanced at her new friend. "I appreciate the concern, but I can take care of myself." "Against a Gorlak?" "Maya, no offense, but you're maybe half his size." "Their skin is like natural armor and their strength is considerable," Maya finished. "I know." Lyra looked unconvinced, but before she could argue further, the morning announcement chimed through the dining hall's speakers. "All students report to first period classes. Academy Day 774 is now in session." Maya's first class was Advanced Tactical Studies, taught by a stern Centaurian professor named Dr. Kelvax. The classroom was arranged in tiered seating, with holographic displays that could project three-dimensional battle scenarios for analysis. Maya took a seat near the back, noting the positions of the other students. Thorne and his friends occupied the front row, their massive forms dwarfing the standard chairs. A cluster of Zephyrians fluttered nervously in the middle section, while the insectoid Krek students arranged themselves with mathematical precision on the left side of the room. The handful of other humans seemed to gravitate toward each other, forming a small group in the lower right corner. Maya recognized a few faces from the dining hall, but none of them approached her directly. Her arrival at the academy had apparently been noted, but she was still an unknown quantity. Dr. Kelvax entered precisely on time, his 4 arms carrying data pads and projection devices. He was an older Centaurian, his exoskeleton bearing the scars of actual combat experience. "Today we will examine the Battle of Zerion 7, he announced, activating the holographic display. A textbook example of how superior numbers can be defeated through tactical innovation and adaptive strategy. The display showed a star system with multiple planets, asteroid fields, and space stations. Red markers indicated the position of enemy forces, a massive fleet of aggressive insectoid ships known as the Devourers. Blue markers showed the much smaller defensive force. The Galactic Defense Fleet was outnumbered 15-1, Dr. Kelvax continued. Standard tactical doctrine suggested a fighting retreat to preserve assets and await reinforcement. Instead, the human admiral in charge chose a different approach. Maya leaned forward slightly, interested despite herself. She had heard of the Battle of Zerion 7, of course, but the official histories were always sanitized for public consumption. Admiral Chen utilized the asteroid field to mask ship movements and create artificial choke points, the professor explained. She divided her fleet into small hunter-killer groups and engaged in hit-and-run tactics while mining the approaches to the inhabited worlds. The display showed the battle unfold, blue units darting in and out of the asteroid field, while red units blundered into carefully prepared traps. It was elegant in its simplicity and devastating in its effectiveness. The result was total victory with minimal losses, Dr. Kelvax concluded. The human forces destroyed or disabled the entire enemy fleet while suffering less than 8% casualties. A Gorlak student raised his hand. "Professor, this seems like cowardice. Why not meet the enemy directly in honorable combat?" "An interesting question, Cadet Thorne. Perhaps you can explain the logic of honorable defeat versus tactical victory?" Thorne's rocky features shifted uncomfortably. A warrior should face his enemies directly, not hide behind rocks and tricks. "And what good is a dead warrior to his people?" Dr. Kelvax asked. "Admiral Chen's tricks saved 3 billion lives and prevented the Devourers from gaining a foothold in this sector. Was her duty to her honor or to the civilians counting on her protection? The question hung in the air, highlighting one of the fundamental differences between species. Gorlax valued individual glory and personal honor above all else. Humans, for all their faults, understood that sometimes survival required sacrificing pride. Maya found herself studying the holographic display more carefully. Something about the tactics looked familiar, but she couldn't quite place why. The use of asteroid fields as force multipliers, the coordination between small unit actions, the timing of the decisive engagement. "Cadet Chen," Dr. Kelvax said suddenly, "you seem particularly interested in this battle. Do you have any observations?" Maya realized that every eye in the classroom was now fixed on her. She had been unconsciously leaning forward, analyzing the tactical display with the intensity of a professional soldier rather than a student. "It's an impressive victory," she said carefully. "Admiral Chen showed remarkable tactical flexibility." "Indeed. And what do you think was the key factor in her success?" Maya considered the question. The real answer was complex, involving intelligence gathering, logistics coordination, and split-second timing under extreme pressure. But that wasn't what a student would say. "She used the enemy's assumptions against them," Maya replied. "The Devourers expected a conventional fleet engagement, so she gave them something completely different." "Excellent analysis. The importance of challenging conventional thinking cannot be overstated in military operations." The class continued with more detailed analysis of the battle, but Maya found her attention wandering. Something about Admiral Chen's tactics was bothering her, a nagging sense of familiarity that she couldn't shake. It wasn't until near the end of the period that she realized what it was. The tactics were almost identical to ones she had used during the Kepler Station defense 2 years ago. Not similar, nearly identical. The same use of terrain, the same coordination between small units, even the same timing for the final assault. But that was impossible. The Battle of Zerion 7 had taken place over 50 years ago, decades before Maya was even born. Any similarity had to be coincidence, unless... Maya felt a chill run down her spine as another possibility occurred to her. What if the similarity wasn't coincidence? What if the Academy's database contained more than just historical records? What if someone had been analyzing her combat reports and creating training scenarios based on her actual battles? The thought was disturbing for several reasons. First, it meant that her service record wasn't as classified as she had been told. Second, it suggested that someone was very interested in how she had achieved her victories. And third, it meant that her cover identity might be more compromised than she realized. Class ended before she could pursue the thought further. Students began filing out, chattering about the lesson and their upcoming combat exercises. Maya gathered her materials slowly, still thinking about the implications of what she had seen. "Interesting class," said a voice behind her. Maya turned to find a human student she hadn't met before. He was tall and lean, with the kind of pale complexion that suggested someone who spent more time in front of computer screens than in sunlight. His uniform bore the insignia of the Academy's Computer Sciences track. "I'm Alex Morrison," he said, extending his hand. "Third-year student, specializing in tactical data analysis." Maya shook his hand, noting the firm grip and the calluses that suggested more physical activity than his appearance indicated. "Maya Chen, transfer student." "Yes, I heard about your arrival yesterday. Word travels fast in a place like this." Alex glanced around to make sure they weren't being overheard. "I was wondering if you might be interested in joining our study group. We meet twice a week to discuss tactical scenarios and share research." "What kind of research?" Maya asked. "Historical analysis, mostly. We're working on a project to identify patterns in human military victories and determine if there are common factors that could be applied to modern situations." Maya's blood ran cold. "What kind of patterns? resource allocation, communication protocols, leadership decisions under pressure, that sort of thing. Alex smiled, but there was something calculating in his eyes. We've made some fascinating discoveries. For instance, did you know that many of humanity's greatest military victories share remarkably similar tactical elements? It's as if the same person planned them all. The comment was casual, off-handed, but Maya heard the underlying message. Alex Morrison knew something, or at least suspected something. The question was how much and what he planned to do with that knowledge. "I'm still getting settled in," Maya said carefully. "Maybe after I've been here a few weeks. Of course, no pressure." Alex handed her a data card. "My contact information in case you change your mind. We're always looking for fresh perspectives, especially from someone with your background." He walked away before Maya could ask what he meant by that last comment. She looked down at the data card in her hand, noting that it was completely blank except for a single line of text. "Some secrets are harder to keep than others." Maya crushed the card and dropped it in a waste disposal unit. Then she headed for her next class, her mind racing with possibilities and implications. Either she was becoming paranoid, or her carefully constructed cover identity was already falling apart. Given her track record, she suspected it was the latter. Her second class was xenobiology, a subject that should have been completely unrelated to military tactics. The instructor was an elderly Zephyrian named Professor Nightwing, whose office was filled with specimens from across known space. "Today we will examine the physiology of various species represented at this academy," she announced in her melodic voice. "Understanding the capabilities and limitations of potential allies and enemies is crucial for any military officer." The class proceeded through detailed analysis of different species: Gorlak, bone density and muscle structure, Zephyrian wing mechanics and spatial awareness, Krek's compound vision and reaction times, Centaurian coordination, and multitasking abilities. "And what about humans?" asked a student. Professor Nightwing's expression became thoughtful. "Humans present an interesting paradox. By most physical metrics, they are among the weakest species in the galaxy. Lower bone density than Gorlaks, slower reflexes than Kreks, less acute senses than most predatory species." Maya listened with growing unease. This was exactly the kind of analysis that led other species to underestimate humanity. "However," the professor continued, "humans possess several unique advantages that are often overlooked. Their endurance is remarkable. They can maintain physical activity far longer than most species. Their adaptability is extraordinary. They can survive in environments that would kill other beings, and their psychological resilience under stress is virtually unmatched." A Gorlak student laughed, a sound like grinding stone. "Psychological resilience. Humans are known for breaking under pressure." Professor Nightwing fixed the student with a sharp look. "Are they? Consider the defense of Kepler Station, where a human garrison held out for 3 months against overwhelming odds. Or the Battle of the Outer Rim, where human forces continued fighting even after their command structure was destroyed. Or more recently, the actions of human special forces during the Frontier Wars." Maya's attention sharpened. The Frontier Wars were exactly where she had earned her classified reputation. "What about the Frontier Wars?" another student asked. "Classified, I'm afraid," Professor Nightwing replied. "But I can tell you that human special forces achieved a kill ratio that defied all statistical models. Individual operatives eliminated hundreds of enemy combatants using nothing but standard equipment and tactical innovation." The classroom was silent now, students absorbing this information. Maya felt like everyone was staring at her, though when she looked around, most eyes were focused on the professor. "The point," Professor Nightwing concluded, "is that physical strength is only one factor in combat effectiveness. Intelligence, adaptability, and determination often matter more than raw power." After class, Maya walked through the academy's central courtyard, trying to process what she had learned. 2 classes, 2 references to human military capabilities that hit uncomfortably close to her own experiences. Either it was an incredible coincidence, or someone was sending her a message. She decided to test a theory. Instead of going directly to her next class, she detoured through the academy's library and accessed a public terminal. A quick search confirmed her suspicions. The Battle of Zerion 7 had indeed taken place 50 years ago, but the details of Admiral Chen's tactics had only been declassified 6 months ago, right around the time Maya had received orders to transfer to the academy. Moreover, Admiral Chen's full name was listed in the historical records: Admiral Sarah Chen, commander of the 7th Fleet and recipient of the Galactic Medal of Honor. Chen, the same last name as Maya's cover identity, and coincidentally, her real surname as well. Her grandmother's name, which Maya had assumed was safely buried in classified genealogical records. Someone was definitely sending a message. The question was whether they were friend or foe. Maya's contemplation was interrupted by the sound of raised voices from across the courtyard. A crowd of students had gathered around what looked like an argument, their voices creating a buzz of excitement and concern. As she approached, Maya could see Lyra in the center of the commotion, her wings spread in obvious distress. Surrounding her were 3 Krek students, their chittering voices aggressive and threatening. "Doesn't belong here any more than the soft skins do," one of them was saying in accented standard. "Navigation programs are for species with proper spatial awareness, not flying insects who get lost in their own buildings." "I've never gotten lost," Lyra protested, her voice barely audible above the surrounding noise. "My test scores are—" "Test scores mean nothing," another Krex interrupted. "When you're responsible for navigating a warship through combat, will your little wings be enough to save us all?" Maya pushed through the crowd, noting how the other students seemed content to watch rather than intervene. Bullying was apparently acceptable entertainment, as long as it wasn't happening to them. "Is there a problem here?" Maya asked, stepping up beside Lyra. The 3 Krex turned their compound eyes toward her, their heads tilting in unison as they evaluated this new development. Krex were smaller than Gorlaks, but faster and more agile, with natural weapons that could slice through most armor. "No problem," the lead Krex said, his voice carrying the subtle clicks and whistles of his native language. "Just explaining to this lost little bird that some positions require more than academic knowledge." "I see. And what positions do you 3 hold that give you the authority to make that determination?" The question caught them off guard. Maya could see them thinking, trying to determine if this was a trick question or a direct challenge. "We are senior students," the leader finally replied. "We have experience that these younglings lack." "Experience doing what?" "Exactly." Now the crowd was watching the exchange with real interest. Maya's questions had a sharp edge that suggested she wasn't going to be intimidated by 3 oversized insects. "Combat experience," the Krex said, his voice growing more aggressive. "We have faced real enemies in real battles." Maya looked at him with genuine curiosity. "Really? What battles? I'd be interested to hear about your experiences." The Krex shifted uncomfortably. The truth was that none of them had any real combat experience. They were students, just like everyone else at the academy. But admitting that in front of a crowd would be a significant loss of face. "Training exercises," the leader said finally. "Advanced combat simulations." "Ah, simulations." Maya nodded as if this was a reasonable answer. "And based on these simulations, you've determined that Lyra is unqualified for her chosen field?" "She is weak, fragile. In a real crisis, she would break." Maya glanced at Lyra, who was trying to make herself as small as possible. The young Zephyrian was clearly terrified, but she hadn't backed down or run away. That took a different kind of courage than what these bullies recognized. "Tell me," Maya said, turning back to the Kreks, "in your simulations, did you ever face an enemy that you couldn't see coming? One that could strike without warning and disappear before you could react?" "Of course not. Such tactics are dishonorable." "Dishonorable?" "Right." Maya's voice was perfectly calm, but there was something in her tone that made several students in the crowd take a step back. "And if you encountered such an enemy in real combat, what would you do?" "We would hunt them down and destroy them in honorable battle. Even if they were faster than you, smarter than you, even if they knew exactly how you thought and could predict your every move." The Kreks leader's mandibles clicked with irritation. No enemy possesses such advantages over a trained Kreks warrior. Maya smiled then, and several students who saw that smile would later describe it as the most frightening thing they had ever seen. "Is that so?" she asked quietly. What happened next would be discussed in academy corridors for years to come. Maya simply took a single step forward, and somehow the lead Kreks student found himself flat on his back with Maya's boot pressed lightly against his throat. His two companions hadn't even seen her move. The courtyard went completely silent. "You see," Maya said conversationally, as if she were discussing the weather rather than demonstrating how easily she could kill a trained warrior, "the thing about honor is that it only works when both sides agree to the rules. Your enemies won't be so accommodating." She removed her foot and stepped back, allowing the Kreks to scramble to his feet. His compound eyes were wide with shock and fear. "Now," Maya continued, "I believe you owe Lyra an apology for questioning her qualifications based on species rather than ability." The three Kreks looked at each other, their natural aggression warring with the very clear demonstration that they were outmatched. Finally, the leader managed a grudging apology before they retreated, their dignity in tatters. The crowd began to disperse, students talking excitedly about what they had witnessed. Maya helped Lyra to her feet, noting that the young Zephyrian's wings were trembling. "Are you all right?" Maya asked. Lyra nodded, but her voice was shaky. "How did you do that? I didn't even see you move." Maya realized she had made a serious mistake. Her training had kicked in automatically when she saw the bullying situation, and she had responded with reflexes honed by years of real combat. But that level of skill was far beyond what any normal academy transfer student should possess. "Lucky, I guess," she said lamely. "Caught him off balance." Lyra didn't look convinced, but before she could ask more questions, a familiar voice interrupted them. "Quite a demonstration, Cadet Chen." Commander Voss approached from across the courtyard, his expression unreadable. Maya stood at attention, her heart sinking as she realized the implications of what had just happened. "Sir," she acknowledged. "Walk with me," the commander said. It wasn't a request. They left Lyra standing in the courtyard and walked toward the academy's administrative building. Commander Voss didn't speak until they were well away from any listening ears. "That was either very brave or very foolish," he said finally. "I'm not sure which." "Sir? You just demonstrated combat skills that are far above academy level, in front of dozens of witnesses, while maintaining a cover identity that requires you to be an unremarkable transfer student." Commander Voss stopped walking and turned to face her. "Did it occur to you that such a display might attract unwanted attention?" Maya felt a chill of realization. Commander Voss knew. Somehow he knew exactly who she was and why she was really at the academy. "I don't know what you mean, sir." "Of course you don't." He smiled grimly. "Cadet, you have 15 minutes to report to Training Room 7 for your combat assessment. Try not to accidentally kill anyone." As he walked away, Maya stood alone on the academy's pristine walkways, surrounded by buildings full of future officers who had no idea what real war was like. Her cover was blown, her mission was compromised, and she still had no idea who was pulling the strings. But one thing was certain: her time as a normal student was over before it had really begun. Training Room 7 was located in the basement of the Academy's Combat Center, far from the gleaming classrooms and social areas where normal students spent their time. Maya arrived to find a Spartan chamber equipped with weapon racks, combat mats, and holographic projectors capable of creating any training scenario imaginable. She wasn't alone. Thorn and his 2 Gorlak friends were already there, along with the 3 Krex students from the courtyard incident and several other senior cadets. They watched her enter with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. Standing at the center of the room was Commander Voss, along with 2 other instructors Maya hadn't met. One was a lean Zephyrian female whose wings bore the scars of real combat. The other was human, a compact woman with graying hair and the kind of posture that suggested extensive military experience. "Cadet Chen," Commander Voss announced. "Meet Major Skyweaver of the Zephyrian Defense Corps and Colonel Martinez of Terran Special Operations. They'll be observing your assessment today." Maya felt another piece of the puzzle click into place. If Terran Special Operations was involved, then her presence at the Academy was part of something much larger than a simple cover mission. "Observers only," Commander Voss continued. "This is still a standard combat assessment. Cadet Chen, you'll be evaluated against 3 opponents in successive matches. Hand-to-hand combat, no weapons, standard Academy rules." He gestured to a section of raised seating where other students had gathered to watch. Maya spotted Lyra among them, her wings fluttering with nervous energy. Alex Morrison was there too, his expression calculating as he observed the proceedings. "Your first opponent," Commander Voss announced, "is Cadet Thorn." The massive Gorlak stepped onto the combat mat, his rocky hide gleaming under the overhead lights. He was easily twice Maya's mass and probably 3 times her strength. By any reasonable metric, this should be an extremely short fight. "Standard rules apply," Commander Voss said. "Match ends when one contestant yields, is rendered unconscious, or in my judgment can no longer continue safely. Begin." Thorn immediately charged forward, his massive fists swinging in powerful arcs designed to end the fight quickly. It was exactly what Maya expected from a Gorlak fighter. Overwhelming force applied with minimal finesse. Maya sidestepped the first punch, ducked under the second, and landed a quick strike to Thorn's exposed ribs. The blow would have broken bones on a human opponent, but barely registered on the Gorlak's rocky hide. Thorn spun with surprising speed and backhanded toward Maya's position, but she was no longer there. She had rolled under his swing and come up behind him, her hands finding pressure points that existed even on Gorlak anatomy. The massive alien stumbled forward, momentarily disoriented. Maya pressed her advantage, using Thorn's own momentum to send him crashing into the wall of the training room. "Impossible," someone in the audience whispered. Thorn recovered quickly and turned to face Maya again, his eyes now showing respect along with anger. This time he approached more cautiously, his guard up and his movements controlled. They circled each other for several seconds, each looking for an opening. Maya could see Thorn thinking, trying to adapt his strategy to face an opponent who was clearly more skilled than he had expected. When Thorn attacked again, it was with a coordinated series of strikes designed to corner Maya and limit her mobility. It was actually quite clever, showing that he had learned from their first exchange. Unfortunately for Thorn, Maya had learned too. She flowed between his attacks like water, never quite where his fists expected to find her. Her own counter-strikes were precise and devastating, targeting nerve clusters and joint connections that most species didn't even know existed. The fight lasted perhaps 2 minutes. When it ended, Thorn was on the ground, conscious but unable to move, his nervous system temporarily disrupted by precisely applied pressure. "Winner, Cadet Chen," Commander Voss announced. "Medical team, please assist Cadet Thorne. He'll be fine in a few minutes." The room was completely silent. Students and instructors alike stared at Maya with expressions of shock and disbelief. A human had just defeated a Gorlak in single combat, something that conventional wisdom said was impossible. "Your second opponent," Commander Voss said, his voice cutting through the silence, "will be Cadet Shiverthorn of the Krex contingent." One of the insectoid students stepped forward, his compound eyes focused on Maya with predatory intensity. Krex were faster than Gorlaks and more agile, with natural weapons that could slice through armor. They were also intelligent fighters who learned from observation. Shiverthorn had clearly studied Maya's fight with Thorn. Instead of charging forward, he circled slowly, his sharp claws extended and ready. When he attacked, it was with lightning-fast slashing motions designed to keep Maya at a distance while wearing her down. Maya gave ground at first, seeming to struggle with the Krex's superior reach and speed. Several students in the audience began to look satisfied, assuming that Maya had simply gotten lucky against Thorn. They were wrong. Maya was studying her opponent, learning his patterns and timing. When she finally went on the offensive, it was with movements that flowed like liquid mercury. She slipped between Shiverthorn's claws, her hands moving in precise patterns that left the Krex stunned and helpless on the mat. "Winner, Cadet Chen," Commander Voss announced again. This time there were no whispers from the audience. The silence was absolute. "Your third and final opponent," the commander continued, "will be myself." Maya felt a chill of surprise. Facing other students was one thing, but Commander Voss was a decorated combat veteran with decades of experience. More importantly, he clearly knew more about her real identity than he was letting on. The commander stepped onto the mat, removing his uniform jacket to reveal the lean, scarred physique of a career soldier. His movements were economical and precise, with none of the wasted motion that had characterized Maya's previous opponents. "Begin," he said simply. What followed was unlike any training exercise Maya had ever experienced. Commander Voss fought like someone who had learned his skills in actual combat, with techniques that were designed to kill rather than score points. More disturbing, he seemed to anticipate her moves before she made them. Maya found herself being pushed to her limits for the first time since arriving at the academy. Every technique she employed was met with a perfectly timed counter. Every trap she set was avoided with frustrating ease. Gradually, she began to realize that Commander Voss wasn't trying to defeat her. He was testing her, pushing her to reveal more and more of her actual capabilities. Each time she held back, he pressed harder, forcing her to respond with increasingly advanced techniques. Finally, Maya made a decision. If Commander Voss wanted to see what she could really do, she would show him. The change in the fight was immediately apparent to everyone watching. Maya's movements became a blur of deadly precision, her attacks coming from angles that seemed to defy physics. For the first time in the match, Commander Voss was forced to give ground, but he was smiling. "Much better," he said, just loud enough for Maya to hear. "Now you're fighting like yourself." They continued for several more minutes, their movements so fast and fluid that the watching students could barely follow them. Finally, Commander Voss raised his hand in the universal signal for yield. "Excellent demonstration, Cadet Chen," he announced to the room. "Class dismissed." The students filed out slowly, their conversations subdued and thoughtful. Many of them cast glances back at Maya, their expressions ranging from awe to fear to suspicion. When the room was empty except for Maya, Commander Voss, and the two observing officers, the pretense finally dropped. "Well," said Colonel Martinez, stepping down from the observation area. That was illuminating. Maya remained at attention, unsure how to respond. Her cover was obviously blown, but she still didn't know what game they were playing. At ease, Sergeant Chen, Colonel Martinez continued. Yes, we know your real rank. We also know about your service record, your classified missions, and your rather impressive kill count. Major Skyweaver joined them on the training floor, her scarred wings rustling softly. The question now is what we do with you. Ma'am, Maya asked. Your cover mission was always temporary, Commander Voss explained. A way to get you onto the Academy grounds without arousing suspicion. The real operation begins now. Colonel Martinez activated a holographic projector, displaying a star chart that Maya recognized immediately. It showed the frontier sectors, where she had spent the last 3 years of her military career. 2 weeks ago, we lost contact with Forward Operating Base Delta 7, the colonel said. The base was home to a classified research project involving captured enemy technology. Maya studied the display with growing unease. Delta 7 was located deep in contested space, surrounded by hostile forces and barely maintained supply lines. If something had gone wrong there. What kind of research? She asked. Bioweapon analysis, Major Skyweaver replied. The enemy has been developing organic weapons that specifically target genetic markers found in various galactic species. We captured samples for study. And now? Maya asked, though she already suspected the answer. Now the base is silent, the research facility is compromised, and we have reason to believe that hostile forces have access to bioweapons capable of targeting any species in the galaxy, Colonel Martinez said grimly. Including humans. Maya felt pieces of the puzzle falling into place. You want me to go in and assess the situation? More than assess, Commander Voss said. We want you to infiltrate the base, determine what happened to the research, and if necessary, eliminate any threats to galactic security. It was a suicide mission, and they all knew it. Delta 7 was hundreds of light years behind enemy lines, accessible only through hostile territory. Even if Maya could get there, getting out alive would be nearly impossible. Why me? Maya asked. You have other special operations personnel. None with your specific skill set, Colonel Martinez replied. Your psychological profile shows remarkable adaptability under pressure. More importantly, you've operated successfully in that sector before. You know the terrain, the enemy tactics, and the local conditions. Maya looked at the star chart again, noting the location of Delta 7 relative to other installations she had hit during the frontier wars. It was deep in enemy territory, but she had been deeper before. What about my cover here at the Academy? Blown, obviously, Major Skyweaver said with what might have been amusement. Your demonstration today will be discussed for months. By tomorrow, every student here will know that the quiet transfer student is actually a highly trained killer. However, Commander Voss added, that may actually work in our favor. Your reputation will provide excellent cover for your real activities. Maya frowned. I don't understand. Think about it, Colonel Martinez explained. What's the first thing any intelligence service does when they identify a potential asset? They try to recruit them. By tomorrow, you'll probably be approached by agents from 6 different factions, all wanting to hire the mysterious human soldier. One of those approaches, Major Skyweaver continued, will be from the people who are actually behind the Delta 7 incident. They'll offer you money, protection, or whatever they think will buy your loyalty. And when they do, Commander Voss finished, you'll have a direct line into their organization. The perfect way to infiltrate their operation and discover their real plans. Maya considered the proposal. It was elegant in its simplicity and absolutely terrifying in its implications. She would essentially be putting herself on the auction block for enemy agents, trusting that she could identify and manipulate the right contacts while avoiding the wrong ones. What if they try to eliminate me instead of recruiting me? Then we'll know we were right to worry about them, Colonel Martinez said grimly. Either way, we'll have our answer. It wasn't much of a safety net, but Maya had operated with less before. She looked around the training room, thinking about the students she had met and the life she was about to leave behind. What about my classmates? Lyra and the others? They'll be told that you've been selected for an accelerated training program, Commander Voss said. It's actually true in a sense. Just not the kind of training they'll imagine. Maya nodded slowly. She had known from the beginning that her time at the academy was temporary, but she hadn't expected to become attached to the people there. Lyra's friendship, in particular, was something she would miss. When do I leave? You don't, Major Skyweaver said. That's the beauty of this plan. You stay here, continue attending classes, and wait for them to come to you. When they do, you'll be in the perfect position to turn the tables. Colonel Martinez deactivated the holographic display and handed Maya a sealed data chip. Your real mission parameters, memorize them and destroy the chip. From this point forward, you're operating under deep cover with full autonomy. Maya took the chip, feeling its weight in her palm. Such a small thing. To contain orders that would likely determine whether she lived or died. One more thing, Commander Voss said as the two officers prepared to leave. Your demonstration today was impressive, but it also revealed capabilities that some people will find concerning. You should expect increased scrutiny from both fellow students and academy staff. Scrutiny I can handle, sir. I'm sure you can. Just remember that everyone will be watching you now. Every move you make, every word you say, every friendship you form, they'll all be analyzed for hidden meanings. After they left, Maya remained alone in the training room, thinking about what she had just agreed to. In many ways, this new mission was more dangerous than anything she had faced in the frontier wars. There, at least, she had known who the enemy was. Here, everyone was a potential threat. Maya made her way back to her dormitory room, noting how other students reacted to her presence. Some stepped aside respectfully, others stared with open curiosity, and a few watched her with expressions that might have been fear or calculation. Word of her demonstration had already spread throughout the academy. When she reached her corridor, Maya found Lyra waiting by her door, the young Zephyrian's wings fluttering with nervous energy. Maya, I heard about your combat assessment. Everyone's talking about it. They're saying you defeated Thorn and two other opponents without even breathing hard. Maya unlocked her door and gestured for Lyra to enter. She needed to be careful now about what she said and how she said it. Every conversation would be analyzed, every friendship evaluated for its strategic value. People exaggerate, Maya said simply. I got lucky. Lyra's large eyes studied her with surprising perception. That wasn't luck. I've seen combat footage from the frontier wars. You move exactly like those Special Forces soldiers. Maya felt a chill of recognition. Lyra was more observant than she had given her credit for, and more knowledgeable about military operations than most navigation students should be. What do you know about the frontier wars? Maya asked carefully. My father was a communications officer with the 7th Fleet, Lyra replied. He used to tell me stories about the human Special Forces units that operated behind enemy lines. He said they could do impossible things. Maya sat on her bed, thinking about implications and possibilities. What else did he tell you? Lyra perched on the room's single chair, her wings folding nervously. He said that most of the human Special Forces soldiers never came home, that they volunteered for missions that were essentially suicide runs because someone had to do them and they were the only ones who could. That's war for you. Sometimes good people don't come home. Is that what you are? One of those soldiers who doesn't come home? The question hung in the air between them. Maya looked at her young friend, seeing intelligence and concern in her alien features. Lyra deserved an honest answer, or at least as honest as Maya could manage. I'm exactly what I appear to be, Maya said finally. A transfer student trying to complete her education. Lyra nodded, but her expression suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. Well, whatever you are, I'm glad you're here. This place is different with you in it. After Lyra left, Maya activated the data chip and read her real mission parameters. The details were even grimmer than the briefing had suggested. Delta 7 hadn't just gone silent. It had sent a final transmission indicating that the base was being overrun by forces using unknown bioweapons. More disturbing, intelligence reports suggested that those same forces were now planning to deploy their weapons against major population centers throughout the galaxy. The death toll could reach into the trillions if they succeeded. Maya's job was to infiltrate the enemy organization, identify their command structure, locate their weapon stockpiles, and, if possible, eliminate both the weapons and the people who controlled them. It was, as she had suspected, a suicide mission. But it was also necessary. Maya destroyed the data chip and began planning for what was to come. She would need to be patient, careful, and above all, convincing. When enemy agents approached her, she would have to make them believe that she was exactly the kind of person they could recruit. A highly skilled, morally flexible soldier with no particular loyalty to any government or cause. It wouldn't be entirely an act. As Maya settled down to sleep, she thought about the strange path that had brought her to this place. A year ago, she had been a simple soldier following orders and fighting battles she believed in. Now she was a deep-cover operative preparing to infiltrate an organization that threatened the survival of entire species. The irony wasn't lost on her. In trying to hide her identity as a killer, she had only confirmed that was exactly what she was, and tomorrow she would begin the delicate process of advertising that fact to exactly the wrong people. Maya closed her eyes and tried to sleep, but her dreams were filled with the faces of soldiers who hadn't come home, battles that never should have been fought, and enemies who wore the faces of friends. When she woke, it would be to begin the most dangerous mission of her career. But tonight, for just a few more hours, she could pretend to be nothing more than a student in a school full of other students, all of them preparing for futures they thought they understood. Tomorrow, Maya Chen would begin her transformation from hidden weapon to willing bait. The galaxy's survival might depend on how well she could convince the universe's most dangerous people that she was exactly what they needed.